I'm Andy Howell. I'm an astrophysics professor, but I'm also a huge film geek. So many of my students get big misconceptions about science from movies. So I want to see a show that honors the movies that get the science right and corrects the misconceptions for the movies that get it wrong. Movies, you're about to get schooled. This is Science versus Cinema. In this episode, The Martian.
It's space. It doesn't cooperate.
Astronaut Mark Watney gets the smackdown put on him by a giant dust storm on Mars. His crew thinks he's dead and has to abandon him. He's left stranded with no way of communicating with NASA and only enough food for a few months. Did the movie get the science right? We're going to the world premiere at the Toronto International Film Festival to ask the filmmakers how they approach the material.
Sci-fi mostly is fantasy. What was really attractive about this is the total reality of the situation.
I came to it through the screenplay first and then read the book.
I talked to no one, and I did not read the book, and I'm okay with that.
Then I'm going to talk to the real experts at NASA to see what they thought.
Ridley was really working hard to get the science right. Now, not everything is right in the movie.
You want to pick a place that is pretty benign terrain, but they actually happen to choose a landing site that's pretty rocky.
And we do get dust storms on Mars, but nothing quite that
Nothing
dramatic,
quite
right?
that dramatic.
Along the way, I'll be grading the film on every scientific subject. This thing is inflating my pants. Let's see what happens when we introduce some Martian wind. It's okay to cheat a little if you need to tell a better story. But first, let's take a closer look at the film's real villain, Mars.
For centuries, science has studied Mars, the only planet where life may exist. Now the screen creates for you the fascinating, frightening spectacle of the first flight to Mars. We have been expecting you.
A little more than 100 years ago, even top scientists sincerely believed that there were aliens on the planet next door. And in movies, it was a crazy, hokey place.
The violent celestial bombardment of Mars by attacking humanoids from another galaxy.
I was hoping that I could speak to a Martian.
Here I am. Speak to me.
Get your ass to Mars. Get your ass to Mars.
Welcome to Mars Federal Colony.
It was only about 50 years ago that we sent the first spacecraft to fly by Mars. Right now we have 7 active missions at Mars, including 2 rovers exploring the surface. We know more about Mars than ever before. And now we can take that knowledge back to movies.
I'm gonna have to science the shit out of this.
The Martian started as a science fiction book by Andy Weir.
I'm a space nut. I'm a big fan of this all my life.
I love the book for its scientific detail, but would any of that be preserved in the movie? I asked that question to screenwriter Drew Goddard.
I think the biggest decision we made early was we're not gonna dumb this movie down. I said to the studio, I was like, if we dumb it down, I don't think we have a movie.
Drew has great intentions, but did the movie really get the science right?
Now we're accelerating towards Mars. Shh. You're Mars.
Mars travel is no joke. It's so far away it takes radio signals traveling at the speed of light between 4 and 24 minutes to get there from Earth. So communication is more like a text message with a busy friend than a phone call.
Incoming.
Most movies gloss over this, but it's a major plot point in The Martian.
Are you receiving me?
32-minute round-trip communications time. This won't exactly be an Algonquin roundtable of snappy repartee.
Space travel is much slower. The spaceship in The Martian, the Hermes, uses ion engines. We've never actually used those in human spaceflight, but NASA's unmanned mission, Dawn, used them to visit the asteroid Ceres. They're really efficient, letting you minimize fuel and allow you to constantly accelerate. So that's exactly what you need for a Mars voyage. Even still, it might take something like 500 days for a round trip.
Seriously though, Rick, how do we get there?
Well, you basically point the bird in that direction, you wait 150 days, and 36 million miles later, we should be at Mars.
That long in weightlessness wreaks havoc on your body. So you want them to have artificial gravity. Here in the demo space of the University of California, Santa Barbara. On the way to Mars, the astronauts live in this giant wheel that's giving them artificial gravity. How does that work? Well, we can use this trick that every kid knows. We put water in a bucket, and if we turn this bucket over, it would fall out because of gravity. But if we spin it around, we can generate acceleration that can counteract gravity. Let's see if it works. All right, look at that. The acceleration of me swinging it around is actually keeping the water in place and counteracting gravity. If I spin it faster, I get more gravity. If my arms were longer, I'd get more gravity. So the Martian is realistic. To create artificial gravity, you spin a giant wheel. But did they get it exactly right? When Andy Weir saw the trailer, he did some calculations.
So when the trailer first came out, I did a bunch of freeze frames measuring against Kate Mara's height so that I could calculate the radius.
I estimate the radius of the wheel is about 8 Kate Maras, or 42 feet.
And the rotation, I figured out they would actually only have about 0.2 Gs. But it doesn't matter. The point is they have gravity, which is the main problem.
Right. Yeah. Now let's talk about sticking the landing. Here with Rob Manning. When you want to land on Mars, this is the guy. This is NASA's guy for getting a spacecraft safely down to the surface.
To land on Mars, you have to go through the atmosphere very, very quickly because the vehicle's flying in from deep space. As it comes in, it's going very, very fast. Now, although the air is very, very thin, there's enough pressure and heat from that. If you didn't have a protective heat shield, your spacecraft would melt. It's coming in so fast that a normal parachute would rip to shreds. So you need to design a very special, lightweight, but very strong parachute to handle the forces of opening at those high speeds.
But that parachute isn't enough. In fact, the Curiosity rover was landed with a parachute and then rockets and then a sky crane. And as for the landing site, in the Martian, they actually land in a real place, Acidalia Planitia. Is that a good spot? We talked to planetary geologist KATIE STACK-MORGAN to find out.
You want to pick a place that is pretty benign terrain, but they actually happen to choose a landing site that's pretty rocky. It's got some small mountain-like features.
But as a geologist, don't you want to go to where the cool rocks are?
Oh, of course. But you know, that's always the constant interplay between the scientists who want to go to the often the most dangerous looking places and the engineers who want to make sure that everybody stays safe.
Andy did a really good job of capturing sort of current state-of-the-art technology. And that's what made it, I think, good and entertaining for me, is I didn't have to say, it's a movie.
All in all, the mission to and from Mars in The Martian is extraordinarily accurate. Next topic, the dust storm.
1,200 kilometers in diameter, bearing 24.41 degrees.
That's tracking right towards us.
Based on current escalation, estimated force of 8,600 newtons.
The movie opens with a violent dust storm that endangers the whole crew. Is that plausible? There are dust storms on Mars, and sometimes they can engulf almost the whole planet. But that's a little bit deceptive. The atmosphere of Mars is only about 1% as dense as Earth's atmosphere. So to simulate that, I've got some cork dust. This is going to represent a really fine-grained sand on Mars. And I've also got some salt. That's going to represent the bigger, thicker grains on Mars. Okay, now we're going to mix up our Martian sand here. Okay, let's see what happens when we introduce some Martian wind. Now, we're going to pour our Martian dust into our Martian wind. So we saw that the really fine-grained dust got blown really far, while the salt just fell straight down. The thin Martian atmosphere can blow around really fine dust, but it can't really blow around people.
The only thing that he had to come up with that was a little bit on the edge was this very big windstorm that starts the movie off.
I made a few deliberate concessions. The sandstorm at the beginning couldn't really happen. Mars' atmosphere doesn't have enough inertia. It's so thin, it wouldn't actually damage anything.
It would have to be going 10 times faster than Earth's atmosphere to get the same physical force. So if there was a 50-mile-an-hour wind, it would have to be 500 miles an hour on Mars.
It's a man versus nature story. I wanted nature to get the first punch.
As a college professor, I can't condone cheating. Unless the answer you come up with is better than the right answer. On to the weighty subject of gravity. Of course they shot The Martian on Earth, but Martian gravity is only 38% of Earth's gravity. To see what that would look like, I got on a gravity treadmill. All right, so this thing is inflating my pants. It has to lift me off the treadmill, basically. You just kind of really jump up in the air with every step. Basically, you can jump higher, and even walking would look different. Why didn't they try to show that in The Martian? I asked Ridley Scott.
Did you talk about trying to portray more Mars gravity?
Are you an expert?
How much do you know?
I'm an astrophysicist.
Earth's gravity, Mars is 40%, right, of Earth. So by the time you put on a fairly chunky suit, it's fairly heavy. So we worked out the mathematics roughly. It's kind of more or less just under norm movement. So that's where we made a decision. So we were wrong, right?
We're not at the point where we can do 40% gravity. I mean, we can do weightless.
We see Mark Watney walking around without a suit, and it still looks like he's on Earth. So the real answer is, it was just too hard to shoot. But imagine how much more immersive the film would have been with that little touch. While we're on the subject of spacesuits, are those slim-fit suits realistic? Not really. Even on Mars, you need a puffy, pressurized suit and a backpack with breathable oxygen and climate control. Matt Damon should have been a little lighter on his feet, even in his suit. Yes! On the subject of gravity, I really wish Ridley Scott would have gone that extra mile. I wonder how it's going to do on the rest of the science. The Martian passed the mission design test, cheated on the dust storm, but failed on the gravity. In The Martian, Matt Damon drives around in a Martian rover. Is that realistic? Of course, we already have robotic rovers driving around the surface of Mars today. Here are the different generations of Mars rovers. The tiny one is the Sojourner rover. Then we've got the Spirit and Opportunity class rover. And then the big one that doesn't even fit in here, the Curiosity rover. We're gonna meet the people exploring Mars right now.
Big rover on the block right now is Curiosity. The rover has 10 instruments, 17 cameras, it has a laser, and it has a drill. It's an amazing robot.
So these are the tools we use to drive Curiosity on the surface of Mars. We would love to be able to drive the rover like anybody would drive a remote control car, but the time delay between Earth and Mars can be anywhere between a few minutes to 20 minutes. So what we have to do is plan out a whole day's worth of activities, and we can plan them out and simulate them here so we can make sure whatever commands we send to the rover are safe. When the rover gets those commands, it executes them and drives on the surface of Mars.
It sort of looks like a video game.
It's kind of like a video game. It's a really boring video game until you think about what it is you're actually doing, and then it's amazing.
Yeah, you're controlling a robot on Mars.
Exactly.
I mean, that's the craziest video game ever.
So yeah, you got to put on your 3D glasses, and these are we have a pair of stereo cameras up on the mast of the rover. And with those stereo images, you can actually see Mars in 3D.
So cool. So like you can definitely tell there's some, you know, hill kind of thing.
Yeah, so we really use this 3D view of Mars to be able to safely evaluate where we're going to go.
With these rovers, we can stick our heads inside and look out the windows, the eyes of the rover. We can use the robotic arm as if it was our very own arms. That rover are really extensions of our own bodies.
One of my favorite parts about this rover is that anybody can see through its eyes. So the pictures that we take get put on the web as soon as they come back down to Earth. So anybody, anywhere in the world, can be one of the first people to see a new place on Mars.
Mars, to all of us, feels like it's not a foreign place. It feels like it's really right next door. And when you look at the pictures that come back, you look at it in the bright light of a sunny summer day on Mars, you really feel like you are there, and it's just right over there.
What a lot of people don't know is that NASA is developing a human rover for Mars that looks a lot like the one in The Martian. It has a pressurized cabin so astronauts don't need a spacesuit, and it has 6 sets of independent wheels. These even let it go up 40-degree inclines. On the subject of space cars, The Martian passes inspection.
How accurate was the science?
I think it was great. I mean, that's one of the reasons I really enjoyed it, was because it was believable. It's something that could actually happen on Mars. You know, when he goes and cobbles apart pieces of the old rovers, it's like, we know that those rovers are really there and that you could maybe do something useful with them. So it was so fun to see his ingenuity.
Yeah, it's like MacGyver of Mars. You know,
It was amazing.
Scrape together stuff, and what's there? Stuff that we've sent there, right?
Stranded on Mars, with no way of communicating with Earth, and without enough food or water to survive, Mark Watney has to get creative. The book has all kinds of cool calculations in chemistry. The movie doesn't go into nearly as much detail, but it does preserve the end results of what's in the book.
Sort of the same on anything I adapt, where I trust that if I love it, I'm going to protect it. And with this book, I loved it so much, it was all about protecting the soul. Look at this movie. The first 20 minutes is a man by himself farming in his own filth. I cannot believe that they heard that and went, all right, let's put that on the screen.
Could you grow potatoes in space dirt?
Mars used to be a much warmer and wetter place that had all the ingredients that would have been necessary for life.
And our big discovery was discovering a habitable environment on the surface of Mars. Sometime in the past, we think there might have been a lake there, a lake with pretty neutral, happy chemistry in which life could have existed if life had been there.
Our understanding of Mars is changing by the day.
Today we're going to announce that under certain circumstances, liquid water has been found on Mars.
Even with the recent announcement of flowing water on Mars, I'm not sure if you could still grow plants in the Martian soil. But I love the fact that Mark Watney is a botanist. If anybody could do it, he could.
How do you make botany interesting on film? And he does. And humor's a big part of it.
I am the greatest botanist on this planet. That was what was really attractive about the character.
I'm definitely gonna die up here if I have to listen to any more god-awful disco music.
How he kept his sense of humor and this incredible logical, kind of practical, solve one problem at a time type of thinking, and it's what these real guys can actually do. It's amazing. I'm sitting next to one of them, so.
Mark Watney is doing exactly what a good engineer or astronaut would do. Take the most important problem, solve it first, then solve each other one in turn. On the topic of space MacGyvering, the Martian doesn't just pass, it gets the best grades since Apollo 13.
Houston, we have a problem.
Now, the subject that's the biggest pet peeve of mine in any movie about space. Whether it's the alien-poking Scooby-Doo characters in Prometheus.
It's moving. These things moving.
The troglodytic oil drillers in Armageddon.
Somebody tell me what this is. Classic ice cream scoop?
The implausibly inexperienced and suicidal medical doctor in Gravity.
Sing me to sleep and I'll sleep.
Or even the randomly homicidal Matt Damon himself in Interstellar.
This is not about my life or Cooper's life. This is about all mankind.
Hollywood always tries to inject artificial drama by making their astronauts both crazy and stupid.
There is a moment.
It is nuts.
Real astronauts are the exact opposite of this. They're cool under fire and amazing at teamwork. They undergo rigorous psychiatric evaluation and choose teams whose personalities mesh.
Don't believe a word they say. You're one of the good ones.
Thanks. Hey, wait, what? Who says that about me?
The Martian got it right. The crew here works together. They joke around and they care for each other, and they don't have stupid fights for no reason. Ridley Scott got the scoop straight from NASA.
Just called him up, and they said, what?
Everybody takes Ridley's call.
You have to look at the interactions between headquarters and the associated centers. Both JPL that's running the robotic missions and Johnson's running the Hermes and the crew. I live that every day. All that communication causes conflict because it raises different opinions and different approaches, and somebody's got to be in charge and somebody's got to say, we're going to do it this way. And you see that in the movie.
You are?
Teddy. I'm the director of NASA.
What would you do if you were Teddy and you had to make the decision between leaving Matt Damon there or sending people back and risking their lives too? What would you do? There's a lot of that feel to the movie.
Not everybody sees eye to eye because they're focused on different priorities, but they hash it out and come to the right decision in the end. I also loved that they didn't portray NASA as stereotypical nerds.
Did you go on a tour of JPL?
Yeah, I did, and some of that found its way in. And part of it was just that threadbare feeling of, oh, it's guys in flip-flops eating lunch in the commissary and talking about life. It's not just pocket protectors and equations, which is what gets portrayed in these things.
We have 18 days before it hits Earth.
Scientists are just regular people. They're men and women, and they come from all different cultural backgrounds.
One thing I've seen since starting on Mars is that the fraction of women is striking. You see a lot of women scientists, a lot of women in operations, a lot of women in leadership roles, and I personally found that very inspiring.
I'm a woman in a male-dominated field. Like, you don't think
as you're ambitious or succeeding or achieving any of the goals that you set out for yourself, being like, God, and I have a vagina on top of this? Like, I can't believe I'm doing it.
First Mexican in space. Write that down.
Okay, my one nitpick is that things look a little too Hollywood.
Hermes is much bigger and much cooler looking in the film than I imagined it. But hey, the rule of awesome, right? It has to be cool.
The astronauts and NASA employees all look like movie stars, and the sets all look like they were made by designers instead of engineers. But that's a forgivable sin. In abandoning the tired old cliches, and in taking the effort to portray NASA and astronauts correctly, it's a small step for this movie, but it's a giant leap for movie kind. All right, let's take a look at the final report card. The Martian failed on its portrayal of Martian gravity, and it cheated on the dust storm. But it gets high marks for the portrayal of space travel, for realistic rovers, for scientifically accurate MacGyvering, and for a plausible portrayal of NASA and the astronauts. Overall, The Martian is a huge win for science.
Well, you know, science fiction is extremely important in our culture.
Did some teacher see something in you that said, no, this one.
I was always a pretty good student, but actually it was science fiction that really inspired me. I saw Star Wars when I was 4, and I thought, you know, I want to do that. I want to see that stuff. Just about every scientist I know got into their career because of science fiction.
Blade Runner, absolutely. 2001: A Space Odyssey, unbelievable.
The big daddy of science fiction really was Stanley Kubrick, and I watched 70mm version of 2001, and it was the threshold of, okay, I now want to do a science fiction movie.
Are you excited about a new Ridley Scott movie
Of
based
course.
on your job?
That's kind of cool, yes.
Do you have a favorite science fiction movie?
Does Dr. Strangelove count?
No, that's...
No, it doesn't.
The one that impacted me personally the most would be Space Camp.
Space Camp, America's real training ground for future astronauts.
Favorite science fiction movie is actually WALL-E. They modeled WALL-E after a Mars rover, so he's hard not to love because you look at him and he seems very familiar.
Science fiction really projects a vision of the future, something that we aspire to. And what I really enjoyed about the book and the movie is how close to reality it can be. It's just around the corner for us.
Well, it's funny, you know, Drew Goddard, who adapted the screenplay, when I sat and talked with him, it was the first thing he said. He said, I want this to be a love letter to science.
That's what this movie is. And I think that he sparked to that because he has that same sort of love for science.
I don't think any movie has ever made science and math look sexier and more interesting and more thrilling than The Martian, and that ain't no easy feat.
Yeah,
said someone who flunked both.
Yeah,
You know?
It really will inspire the next generation of scientists.
I feel like if that's all we do.
And we had a long conversation about that and how that's a really wonderful thing to put out into the world right now. And I don't have any lofty expectations, but I do hope that some kids see it and geek out on the science and enjoy it. And maybe it's one thing in many other things in their life that might push them in that direction.
You know, I really think that indeed will happen. You know, we're talking about the Mars generation. You know, Ridley and I were around when we landed on the moon, and we were the lunar generation. That was pretty spectacular. But when we landed Curiosity on Mars, we had the world's attention. And that's the Mars generation. That's the inspiration that will propel our economy forward by bringing in the scientists and the engineers. And the movie and the book is a fabulous opportunity for really us to celebrate that.
The first human to set foot on Mars might just be a kid in the movie theater today who's inspired to study science and become an astronaut, all because of The Martian.